Do you know that feeling when something's just off? Like your mom seems more confused than usual, or your dad's getting agitated over things that never bothered him before? Or maybe your person is sleeping way more than normal, and you just can't shake this nagging feeling that something's brewing underneath the surface or that something is just wrong. Here's what I tell every caregiver in my practice. And here's what I want you to know that instinct that you're having, I need you to trust it. After years of walking alongside families through every stage of dementia, from diagnosis to hospice, I've learned that caregivers often sense changes long before anyone else does. And the problem is, most of us don't know what we're looking for, or we tend to dismiss those gut feelings that we get just because we think that we're getting sort of paranoid. But today, I'm going to share with you those early warning signs that a crisis might be in your dementia caregiving journey before it boils over into a hospital visit, a dangerous situation, or you becoming completely burned out. Because here's the thing, once you know what to watch for, you can step in with compassion and clarity instead of scrambling in panic mode and chaos. I'd like to start with the thing that most people miss, and that's the physical signs that show up days or even weeks before a crisis begins. Your person's body is constantly communicating, but dementia makes that harder for them to tell you what's going on. I remember working with a caregiver once who said, "My mom is just acting different. She seems kind of off." And she couldn't really put her finger on it. But when we really started to look and evaluate things, we discovered that her mom had been walking differently. And I know that sounds kind of silly because you're probably thinking, well, what does walking differently have to do with anything? But once I examined it, it was just slightly a little bit more unsteady, like she was favoring one side over the other without even realizing it. And 3 days later, after a urine analysis, we found out that she had a urinary tract infection, and this was affecting her balance and her cognition. So here's what I want you to watch for. Even those changes in gait or balance, even those little tiny subtle ones, you need to start noticing. Like, is your person starting to hang on to the walls more, or are they taking smaller steps? Are they sitting down more frequently and staying there? Those activities that they used to do standing up, are they now sitting down more and choosing activities where they get to sit more? Because these just aren't that your person's getting older signs. It's your person's body signs telling you that something's starting to shift. And I need you to pay attention to their sleep patterns, not just are they sleeping more, but I want you to start looking at the quality and the timing. Have you started to notice that they're suddenly waking up at 3 a.m. after months of previously sleeping through the nights? Do you hear them shifting around in bed, tossing and turning like they're uncomfortable or they just can't fall back to sleep? Or maybe they are sleeping constantly and seem more exhausted when they're awake. Because everything that I've seen in my practice says that sleep disruption often comes before behavioral changes. And it's one of your biggest red flags that something else is starting to brew. Here's something that breaks my heart a little bit, and it's often missed by caregivers, and that's changes in appetite or eating habits. Because maybe your person is suddenly pushing their food around their plate, or they've stopped asking for their favorite snacks. And sometimes it's not that they don't want to eat, they might be having trouble swallowing. Or their sense of taste has changed, or they're just too confused to remember how to use a fork properly. Now, let's talk about the emotional and behavioral shifts that happen before the crisis that everyone sees. You see, most families call me when the behaviors are already overwhelming. When dad's wandering at night, or he's got out of the house, or mom's become so combative that doing her personal care has become impossible. But there are always warning signs that come first. If you notice your person's having increased anxiety or restlessness, this is huge because your person might start pacing more and wringing their hands or asking those same questions over and over, but with more urgency than normal. And you might not have had this happen to you before, but they might start following you from room to room. And this isn't about them being clingy, it's their brain sensing that something's not right, even if they can't articulate that well. Another cue that you should be looking for is what I like to call emotional brittleness. And this is when your person might start crying over things that they've never cried at before. They might start crying over commercials that have never bothered them before, or getting frustrated with simple tasks that they could do last week. It's suddenly like their emotional reserves are running low and everything feels harder for them to manage. The last warning sign that I'd like to talk about is one that families often interpret wrong. And this is a withdrawal in your person's personality or sudden personality changes. If your person has usually been social and they start avoiding family gatherings, or your loved one who was once gentle becomes snappy and irritable, don't assume it's just because the disease is progressing. Often, it's their way of coping with feeling overwhelmed and confused about changes that they're experiencing, but they can't verbalize to you. The key here is recognizing that behavior changes don't happen in a vacuum. There's almost always something that's underlying, and that might be pain, infection, medication side effects, or environmental stressors that are building up pressure before a huge explosion. And I'd like to talk to you about what I call the caregiver warning system. And and this is where caregivers often get neglected, but we need to start shifting our thinking about this. And as a caregiver, nobody talks to you enough about your own body and your emotions as being a part of that early warning system. As caregivers, you are so tuned in to your person that oftentimes you start to absorb their stress, their confusion, long before you even realize what's happening to you. So you need to start tuning into yourself. Are you suddenly feeling more anxious for no reason at all? Are you having trouble sleeping even when your person seems to be sleeping well? Are you finding yourself snapping at people, at family members, or feeling extremely overwhelmed by simple decisions that never bothered you before? Because these aren't character flaws like some people might think. These are signals that something is shifting inside of your caregiving dynamic. And I've had this conversation more than I'd like to admit, where family members feel like they say, I'm just losing my mind, but I can't explain why. And when we start to look deeper, we discover that their family members' needs have been gradually increasing, but they were increasing so slowly that they didn't notice that the extra mental and emotional load they've been carrying has caused them to become extremely exhausted. So I want you to start thinking of it this way. Your exhaustion is data. Your frustration is information. Your sense that something's got to give is your internal compass telling you that the current situation isn't sustainable. And I don't want you to ignore these feelings or push through them, because they're telling you that it's time to adjust your approach before you hit that wall. And here's what I want every caregiver, including you, to understand. Recognizing these warning signs isn't about preventing every single crisis. It's about responding with intention instead of just reacting in panic. Because we all know that sometimes a crisis is inevitable. But when you see it coming, you can start to prepare for it. You can reach out for support. You can start contacting doctors before there's an emergency. The last thing that I want you to start thinking about is the environmental and social changes that often signal that trouble is ahead for you. Your person's relationship with their physical space tells you so much about their internal state. Have you noticed that they're starting to get lost in familiar places, not just outside, but in their own home? Maybe they're standing in the kitchen looking confused, or they can't find the bathroom. This spatial disorientation often happens gradually, and it's a sign that their brain is working harder to process information that used to be automatic to them. The most important thing that I want you to take away is the changes that you're seeing in your person don't mean you're failing as a caregiver. They mean that your person's needs are evolving, and it's time for you to evolve too. Whether that's a change in your care plan or a change in the way that you're caring for your person. Because the families who navigate dementia with the most grace aren't the ones who prevent every single challenge. They're the ones who see changes coming and adjust with compassion instead of scrambling in crisis mode. So before I go, I'd like to leave you with a tip. How do you turn this awareness into action? I need you to start trusting your instincts. Keeping a simple journal, not a medical chart, about what's happening. Mom seemed more confused today, or dad asked about his mother 3 to 4 times this morning. I felt more anxious than usual during our grocery trip. And then start looking for patterns, not just individual incidences. One bad day doesn't mean crisis is coming, but 3 bad days in a row of increased confusion combined with you feeling more stressed and your person sleeping poorly, that's your early warning sign. And that's telling you, pay attention. And make sure that you have a plan. And in that plan, you need to have documented what you're going to do when you start to notice these signs and symptoms appearing in your loved one. Maybe that looks like calling your person's doctor and letting them know, hey, I've noticed these changes, and let them know what you're noting by what you've been journaling and documenting. The goal here isn't perfection. It isn't to prevent every difficult moment in dementia caregiving, because we all know that's impossible. And even trying this will simply exhaust you. The goal is to move from reactive to responsive, to catch those changes while you still have options instead of waiting until you're in crisis mode. Your person is counting on you, but they need you to be calm, confident, and connected, not panicked, overwhelmed, and freaking out. When you learn to read those early signs, you can show up for them with clarity and compassion that they deserve, and so do you. You can take care of them and yourself in the process. And I know these signs feel like a lot to watch for, and I know that you're already carrying so many things all at once. But here's what I've learned walking this journey with so many families in my practice. The caregivers who feel most confident aren't the ones who have it all figured out, but they are the ones who feel supported and have a framework and a guide to show them how to do it. I want you to know you don't have to figure this out all alone and by yourself anymore. But I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know, what's one challenge you've been noticing lately that's had you feeling unsettled? Sometimes I read and respond to every single comment. I will do my best to help you take the next right steps. You're not just keeping someone else going, you're a person too, and your needs matter. And when you can take care of yourself with the same compassion you show your loved one, everyone wins. Thanks for joining. And until next week, I'll be here sharing for you while you're caring for them.